Here we are, this is our wax station, and I have some tips written down on here. So place wax on the foot of your art form, so whatever it is, just wax that bottom section. You could even go up, you know, like 1/4 of an inch up the side to ensure definitely that your glaze won't be on there. And then here's just a reminder that you can also use this wax for wax resist. So I'm just using a good old fashioned mini crock pot. You could use a crock pot as big as you wanted. The bigger the form, the bigger the crock pot. That way you could actually probably just dip your wax if you wanted to. So I just have some regular old wax here and shaved it down so it melts a little faster. And I just turned this on, so there's no melting happening right now. But we'll let that do its magic. I'll come over and stir it a little bit, and then I'll show you the different processes of wax. So these mugs are the ones that are ready to glaze. So before I do any glazing or any waxing or anything like that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take my damp sponge and I'm just gonna kind of wipe this clean. I don't wanna run it under water, but I do want to wipe this off. So I'm just getting any kind of particles that might be on it, any dust that might be on the mug. I'm just getting all of that off of there. So I'm just kind of lightly, not like scrubbing it, I'm just kind of wiping it down. So I'm going to do that to all of my mugs, and then I'm going to wax the foot. And I'm going to wax the foot so that helps the glaze from you know, dripping on there, or helps me keep the glaze from off the bottom. And we don't want to glaze the bottom because our glaze has glass in it. And if we glaze the bottom and then put it on the kiln shelf, it's going to stick to the kiln shelf. This is going to melt. And really the only way to get it off is to break it. So we're going to wax the bottom of these, the foot, to kind of help avoid that situation. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wipe down the rest of my mugs, and then I'll show you a couple different wax procedures that you can approach your mugs with. So I'm just gonna, it's okay if your brush has wax in it because it's gonna melt when as soon as it touches the hot wax. So just be careful of the pot because it is warm. And you wanna be kind of aware of where you're holding your brush. You don't want it to drip down the side. You can hold this if you want, but don't let that wax get on the side of your bisqueware as you're pulling the wax from the container. Maybe you just kind of tap it off if you want to, because if you get wax on the side of your bisque, it will not come off. So you're stuck with what you have, and you only need to do one layer of this, just a single layer. And I'm going to have you guys come down about 1/4 of an inch on the sides. See what I'm talking about? Don't let that happen. So you guys are going to need to hold this. Hold it like this. You can hold it up in the air, but for filming purposes, I need it down here. So you can see I'm coming up about 1/4 of an inch on the side. Don't let it drip. I'm gonna pick this up because you see how that dripped right there? It's because I had it on its side laying there. So by holding it this way and glazing that 1/4 of an inch, it won't drip down the side of your pot. You guys are not going to want that. So about 1/4 of an inch up the edge once you've already glazed, or I'm sorry, waxed the bottom. And now you're going to let this dry. So let it dry. Hold it kind of on it this way until that wax starts to stiffen up. And then because it's probably still a little bit wet, once it's stiffened and you don't think it's going to drip anymore, then you can kind of store it this way while you glaze the foot of your mug. So I'm going to stir up my glaze for a good minute or so. Make sure all those particles are stirred up. Because if not, they're going to be sitting down at the bottom of your jar and you're not going to get any color. So make sure that you stir really, 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 really well. I think this is the part where beginners get really lazy and don't understand how important this is. So really make sure you're stirring up that glaze. Once you have your glaze all stirred up, what I like to do is I like to put it on my turntable, and I like to put a paper towel down. It's just easier for cleanup purposes. And I like to start with the outside of my piece. So the outside of my piece. So just a quick tip, I tend to wash my brush out first, make sure there's not any glaze left over from previous colors, and then I just think it's really helpful to have your bristles moist before putting it in your glaze. So then you're going to load up your brush. You have your piece on your turntable. So we're just going to try to do an even layer across our bisque. And you're going to work your way down. So you'll probably have a little bit smaller brush than me. Ooh. Do you see how that's repelling right there? That's because I got some wax on that. So that's what I was talking about. If you get wax on your bisqueware, the glaze is going to repel it. And there's nothing that you can do about that. Fortunately, I'm going to be adding a wax design on this, so I can show you how to do that. So I can kind of maybe add that in, but so I have my first layer on the outside, then I'm going to do the inside of my mug. This way, if I needed to, I could have picked my mug up and I could have like held it like this if I needed to turn it to get to any pieces. But I didn't need to do that because I was using my turntable, so I'm okay. And again, try to stay in the same direction. So I'm just kind of going horizontal as I turn my turntable on the inside. Looks like I got some wax on the rim and on the inside as well. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. See those little dots that are showing up? Let me refocus this. Right there. That's because I got wax on the side of my bisque. So that's done. I can't do anything about it. So that's why it's so important that when you're putting wax on the foot of this, you are being super careful. A lot of times that's why people like to dip their pieces as well instead of using a brush. So if you're going to do that, just be careful when you dip it, you know exactly how far you're dipping into that wax. I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat here on my mug. And then once I let this second coat dry, so I went horizontal the first time, so I'm going to go vertical this time. Once I let this second coat dry, I'm going to do a wax resist on this piece. And if you don't want to do a wax resist, that is perfectly fine. This is just a technique that is an option for you. So we'll go over kind of what that would look like here in the next section of this video. Alright, so at this point I have 2 layers of this color on my bisqueware, and now I'm going to do a wax resist of a design. So I'm going to dip my brush in the wax, and then I am going to draw my image right onto the glaze with my brush. And wherever this wax is, my next layer of glaze will not be applied. Will not allow that to happen. So now you can see the wax. Now, if you're like, well, that's fantastic, but I'm not really good at freehanding, If you want, you can, this needs to dry a little bit, so hopefully I don't mess it up, but if you want, you can take your pencil and you can just kind of lightly draw on your glaze and give yourself kind of a guide. That is perfectly fine if you need to do something like that. That way you know exactly where you're going to apply your wax. If you feel like freehanding it is going to cause you a little bit of problem, because the pencil, he's going to have a little bit of a lip on him, because the pencil is going to burn away, so that will not be an issue for you. So this fish is going to be kind of fat. That's all right. We'll kind of, yeah, put his top fin. Let's make it a little bit more crazy. But like I said, if you feel better about drawing it on there with a pencil first, you know, that is perfectly fine. I also encourage you to kind of make a plan in your sketchbook first. You know, it's always good to have a plan going into this, because once you apply that wax, you can not remove it. You are stuck with it. And you only need to do one layer of the wax. And so once that is dry, you are ready to apply your next layer of color. So I'm just going to kind of go through and I'm just going to add a few more features to this. I'm going to do some waves. And I think a lot of people like Wax Resist because, you know, you don't have to be super accurate. I mean, it's nice if you are. I don't use a lot of Wax Resist in my own work because I like my stuff really, really precise, but it is kind of a fun little technique to use every now and again. If you just kind of want to do like a free form drawing. Kind of more of a gestural kind of situation happening here. I think that's why a lot of young artists like it too, because you don't have to be, you know, really super precise or, you know, really great at drawing. If you do go further into your ceramic career, you are going to want to make plans though. And what I mean by that is like drawings of what you think maybe you would want to put on your pieces. You'll just be happier with your results. You know, and then a lot of this takes some experimenting. Might not work out the very first time. You might hate it. But you know, don't let that deter you. Try again, and you might like it better the second time. So this piece is now ready for me to put my next layer of color on. Alright, so we're going to apply our next color right over our previous color and over our Wax Resist. And this is kind of fun to kind of watch this unfold. And wherever you have that wax, the glaze is going to be repelled. So that should happen. That is normal. And while that layer is drying, I'm going to go ahead and do the inside.